The National Catholic Broadcasting Council presents Let Us Reflect Together. 40 Days of Lent Retreat, From the Cross to Hope. Day 20, Journey with the Holy Family, Faith in Ordinary Life, with Father Tom Lynch.
When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Jesus said to them, "Fill the jars with water." And they filled them to the brim.
We've just heard the whole story of the wedding at Cana. I know it so well that when I proclaim it at weddings, I never have to look at the text. And I love it because it is so much the story, for instance, of a priest and his mother. Let me tell you. And it's a standard kind of story. It's interesting that the very first miracle is a miracle just to save the embarrassment of a young couple. And I've always struck by it. And so was St. Augustine. St. Augustine said of this passage that the Lord looked down at the waters looked up at the Lord and blushed. It's a marvelous phrase. But it's a kind of a work, because Jesus said, well, wait a second, my work has not yet begun. But Our Lady knew better. The work of Jesus Christ began right there in Bethlehem. It began because we ourselves are part of the great work of God. What's your work? You know, a lot of you might say, well, I don't have any work. I'm retired. I say, come on. Christians don't have an expiry date. We have a work, and we have several works. It was the genius of the great late St. John Paul II who wrote an encyclical, that is a major letter, for all the church, and it was called On Human Work. He wrote it in the early 1980s, and it's, like most of his works, profound and deep. But he says something very definite to us. He said, work creates the worker. Think about how what you did made you who you are. And we've normally had any number of different jobs. I've had this job and that job. As a priest, I've had all kinds of different jobs. Think of what your job meant to you and how it changed you for good and for ill. Think of what it meant to you to be able to work to accomplish something. What it meant at the end of a day where you might have been very tired, but something was accomplished. Where you worked in the certainty that something has changed because you were there. It isn't like a bad Charlie Chaplin movie where you're just a cog in the machine. Instead, you were essential in that work. You changed. And John Paul II would say, you changed for the better. Your ministry was part of that work. Secondly, he said, work changes the community, and that community of other workers. You spend an enormous amount of time with other people at work. And how have you changed them, and how have them changed you? That's a hard thing, because you may say, well, you haven't had to work with the people I've worked with. How did you effect a change in their lives, and in their hearts, and indeed in their souls? That's what it means, is the ministry of work. To say that God doesn't just have you in that factory or have you in that store or have you online or doing whatever just by chance. Life is never random. We are called to the people that we are going to be around with to be able to transform them. St. Therese of Lisieux, when she was working in her monastery, would work with very difficult people. And one of them said, St. Therese, why are you around me all the time? What do you find so fascinating to be around me? And she said, little did she know I found nothing fascinating about her, but I decided to love her into the fullness of humanity. Thirdly, work changes the world. I'm not just talking about the physical world. It does. All the things that you have, the very fact that you're watching me through technology is because people have worked and are working to transform that world. But we transform a world way beyond just the things that we have changed, because we are called as a whole people to be changed. We are called to bring forth the power of Jesus Christ by our actions and by our work. And if you think that just because you stop getting a paycheck that you're out of this, you're wrong. My mother had 8 children in 11 years, and we had other foster children as well. And she went back to school teaching 6 weeks after I was born. And somebody said to her, "Frances, why are you going back to work?" And she said, "Back to work? What do you mean back to work?" She said, "I've been working steadily." The truth is, you're working now. Your prayers, your actions, your presence are the work of God seen manifested in our world. Make sure there's a goal, there's a purpose, and you engage in that work with the fullness of the joy of Christ himself, who never ceases to work. It was Jesus Christ who said, "I work and my Father works." And so they're at work in you, just as you are at work with them, in the certainty that we bring about that world that Christ has promised to all those who will know him and follow him.
Join us tomorrow for Day 21, Journey with the Holy Family, Standing at the Cross with Father Tom Lynch. For more information, please email us at info@ncbc.ca, visit our website at dailytvmass.com, or call our office toll-free at 1-888-383-6277.